This is Adam and Abe, and we're doing the turtle group. And this is the turtle. This is the turtle's outer shell. It functions in protection. This is the scaly skin. It functions in holding moisture and protects the body. These are the fat bodies. They function in storing fat and energy reserves.
Alright, so these large brown masses right here are the two different lobes of the liver. As you can see, this single artery right here is a blood supply to the liver. It's heavily supplied with blood. And if you lift that up, you can see that it's actually the same liver. It's just got two different lobes and they're connected right here. And so what the liver does is it functions to produce bile, which is then stored in the gallbladder, which you can actually see right here. And it also cleanses the blood of different waste products and other toxins. Alright, so this is the beginning of the digestive system. This is the mouth of the animal, the mouth and the pharynx. The pharynx is just the large opening in the cavity at the back of the mouth where the tongue attaches. As food is ingested in here, it goes down through the pharynx and through the esophagus. It goes down the esophageal tube. Part of it's covered here, but it then will go underneath here and into the stomach. And the stomach of the animal is actually quite large. So the stomach will come, wraps around over here, and food will continue through the stomach. And then there's a single sphincter right here, where food is stopped before entering the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine. And in the duodenum, digestion actually continues. Digestion occurs in the stomach, digestion of food. In the duodenum, digestion will continue as bile is secreted into it by the gallbladder, which goes in through the bile ducts, right here at the end of the gallbladder. And then this is the pancreas, which also secretes pancreatic fluid and other digestive juices into the duodenum, which helps with the continuation of digestion into the small intestine. So this membrane surrounding the small intestine is called the mesentery. Not only does it hold it in place, all coiled and everything, but as you can see, there are also blood vessels within it, and that is how the blood supply runs next to the small intestine, and nutrients that are taken out by cells inside of the small intestine enter the bloodstream. Alright, so this right here is where the end of the small intestine meets with the colon, and this structure right here is the cecum. And it is going to function as another helper of digestion. There are bacteria and other bodies that are stored in here that are going to continue to digest food as it goes through the large intestine, also known as the colon. Alright, so this larger structure right here is the large intestine, also known as the colon, and that's going to continue into the rectum, which then goes into the cloaca, which is also part of the urogenital tract, and that is going to excrete solid waste through the anus of the creature, which is right here. Interesting function of the large intestine is that it's going to reabsorb water that is in food. It's going to use it for other bodily functions, which is also going to dry out waste into solid particles of feces, which are then going to be excreted through the cloaca and the anus. So this is going to be the head of the organism. This is where a lot of the sensory organs are going to be. And as you can see, there's three major sensory organs that are actually on the head. You have the eye right here, which is going to function in sight. The eyes actually have three different membranes that kind of function as eyelids, I guess. There's the top eyelid, a bottom eyelid, and then there is a third one called the nictitating membrane, which actually is going to keep the eye moist and is going to wipe away any debris that's solid that's going to stay on the eye and obstruct vision. Also, Turtles don't actually have a outer ear. What they have is a tympanic membrane. You can see it's a slight indentation right here on the skull, and what that's going to do is it's going to vibrate, and then it's going to send signals to the sound processing center of the brain, and what it's going to do is discern sound that way, but they actually do not have an outer ear. Also, on the tip of the skull right here, the most forward part of the body right here are two nares. They are external nares, and those are going to be basically like the nostrils of the animal. They're going to function in determining scents and other smells. Alright, so this right here is the head of the animal. The most of the skull has been removed on the left side of the animal's head, and that's in order to see the brain, which is going to be at the dorsal side of this cranial cavity here. And this right here is a model of the brain. So this section right here is going to be the olfactory section of it. It's going to have olfactory bulbs, which you can barely see visibly right here, one of the olfactory bulbs of the brain. This section right here is not visible, but this is the olfactory bulb. That's going to be the tip of that section right there. And then this, the larger section right here, this is the cerebrum. This functions in sensory processing. It's going to analyze information received from sensory organs like the nose. And that section is visible right here. It's going to be a larger part of the brain right there. And then next is the eye right here. It's attached by the optic nerve, which is going to send impulses to right there in the brain. That's going to be the optic lobe on the model. This section this is going to be the midbrain. It's the optic lobe. This is going to receive images from the eyes, and it's going to analyze them and process them. It allows the turtle the ability to see. The next section right here on the underside is the cerebellum. This is going to function in balance, depth perception, and give the turtle some cognitive function. You can not quite see it because there's this larger piece of the skull right here that's blocking the view, but it's going to be underneath the optic lobe, deeper inside of this cranial cavity right here. And then the last section of the brain right here is the medulla oblongata. You can see it visible right here. It's going to be the hindbrain behind the optic lobe inside the cranial cavity, more towards the anterior side of the cranial cavity. And what the medulla oblongata is going to, it's going to function in control of the involuntary functions such as the heartbeat, breathing, blood vessel dilation and constriction, other functions of the body that are going on but the turtle has no control over. So these are the major parts of the circulatory system of the turtle. This is the heart right here next to a model of the heart of the same size, same scale. So this right here is the right atrium. The animal is on its dorsal side, so it's going to be reversed. This is the right atrium. As you can see, it corresponds in the specimen. This is also the right atrium. This is the left atrium. As you can see, it also corresponds to the left atrium here. It's covered with a little bit of metal. There's a more complete view of it. And then this is the ventricle. It's got a single ventricle, and as you can see, it corresponds to the organism here. And actually, an interesting characteristic of this is the single ventricle is divided by a incomplete septum, which means that this is almost a four-chambered animal. But instead it's just a three-chambered heart where deoxygenated blood comes in along and mixes with oxygenated blood and is then pumped out through the body as mixed. So these are the different blood flows of the heart. So deoxygenated blood from the body flows into the right atrium, which then flows into the single ventricle and mixes with oxygenated blood that comes into the left atrium from the lungs. It mixes both oxygenated and deoxygenated blood in the single ventricle, which then convulses upwards, forcing blood into the right and left subclavian arteries, which will then go and disperse blood around the entire body, including the front legs of the animal. and also out the left aortic arch and left pulmonary artery out into the body, and also bringing the mixed blood to the lungs so that it can be supplied with oxygen.
This is the bladder of the turtle in the excretory system. It functions anaerobically and it secretes hydrogen ions. So that is the kidney on the other side. Those are the kidneys. They function in excretion and osmoregulation.
Disgusting.
That is a testy, other side. They produce and store sperm. That is the epidermis, and it stores sperm. Other side. That is the penis. It's a urogenital tract, and it functions in excreting urine and reproduction.
So this is the animal's respiratory system. This right here is the trachea. It is a tube that runs all the way down into the body cavity of the animal right here. It's actually surrounded by rings of cartilage that help give it support. And air that comes in through the mouth of the animal will then go through the pharynx and is allowed into the trachea by a flap of tissue called the glottis. Air will then travel down the trachea, and then the trachea will branch off into two smaller bronchi, which lead to the lungs. This right here is the right lung. It's partially deflated. If you remove the small intestine out of the way, you can see some more of it down here. It's very deflated. Usually there's some parts of it that still have some air in it. And also you can see the left lung, the other side, also by moving the intestine. This one is actually a lot better. There's still sections of it that are still partially inflated, but it's completely deflated on the dorsal side right here. And actually, turtles have an interesting circulatory or respiratory system. They have a positive pressure air intake. They don't have a diaphragm, which is the muscle that in humans is used to push out lungs by pressing against them and pushing the air out during exhalation. What actually happens is because there's not enough space in the body cavity due to the rigidity of the turtle's shell, the leg muscles actually contract, which will then pull the digestive tract down, allowing the lungs to inflate into the abdominal cavity. And then as the leg muscles decontract and the abdominal muscles squeeze inward, the lungs are pressed dorsally against the shell, and that is going to expel air out through the trachea again.